Okay, so 11:12 is another short one. You notice that when we get to the end of the chapters, they tend to get shorter because we're just reviewing the meat of the previous chapters. So this is a sort of prep of going out into the community. Ideally, you've already gone out into the community by now or had some interactions with deaf people. I know with the quarantine, it's made it nearly impossible, but if you can find ways of doing it, either through like Facebook groups, finding a group of deaf rock climbers. If you need help with that, I know a couple. If you are looking for someone who's deaf and does capoeira, I can hook you up with someone like that, and you can talk to them. If you are having trouble and want to look for something specific, let me know. But if you go on Facebook and type any deaf and anything else, you can probably find them. And it would be a good way of just establishing simple communication, not out of desperation of, I'm an ASL student and I need to talk to somebody, but finding someone with shared interest, because then it's a little less parasitic in nature. I guess that's the best way. All right. Wait, stop. Okay. So, badoosh. So, this whole chapter is going to be watching videos of situations and evaluating those situations. What worked, what didn't work, what could have been done differently, where did someone go wrong? Oh, you know what? This is the same one from before. I needed to delete that whole thing because there's no new vocab in this chapter. So we've got at the cafe version 1 and at the cafe version 2, two different videos, one scenario. One is the right way to handle things. One is not the best way of handling things. So what we would do in class is just you know what? That's what happened. This has opened up the wrong PowerPoint. I put them in a different video. No. Here we go. Okay. My apologies. Okay. I did. I was correct. There is no new vocab. So the key behaviors are, to keep in mind as you watch these videos, are there's a way to offer to help by interpreting or trying to help facilitate signing for a deaf person. Ultimately, it's their decision. They have a right to their agency and don't need to be saved. If they ask for help or if you can offer help, they always have the right to refuse. Most deaf people have spent their entire lives dealing with hearing people who don't sign, and they have their own strategies. So you don't ever want to take that away from them. It's always their choice. So the first thing to do is, if you notice a situation where there's a deaf person having some issues talking with a hearing person, usually the issue is with the hearing person because they're ignorant, and think a deaf person is somehow mentally deficient because they can't hear. Whole other conversation. Okay, so you always want to make sure that the deaf person is the one who's in charge of what's going on and makes all the decisions. So what I will recommend, and I've had this happen so many times, is just somehow letting the person know, the deaf person know, that you sign. If they are, talking with a barista, and you can, if you are can get within eyesight move and say something like "need help" or "it's time," need help? Something as simple as that, or like a SL student, even something as simple as that, just letting them know. And then if they go, I'm fine. Or if they're like, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, come on. It's all up to them. If they're like, it's fine. Some people are jerks and they'll be like, I don't need you. Fine. It's probably not someone you necessarily want to be friends with. And also rewind the conversation, because did you come across as being, hey, I could come in and save you? Especially if they think you're just trying to like flirt with them, that it would be negative. Anyway. Um, so there have been many times. One time, my then girlfriend and I were looking at bikes in a bike store, and so we're looking around, and out of the corner of my eye, I noticed an older couple come in, and sort of watching, and I turned to my girlfriend. I said, "They're deaf." She goes, "Oh, do you know them?" I'm like, "No." She goes, "Well, how do you know they're deaf?" I'm like, they just are. Like, I could tell that, one, they weren't talking to each other. Two, it was like little signs. They were trying not to stick out. And then I noticed they were signing to each other. Well, do you want to go ask him? I don't know. How do we? And I I signed something to my girlfriend, who signed a little bit. So I signed a little bit to her, and I could see that they saw me. And then I made sure that, we made eye contact a little bit later. And I actually, here's my strategy for broaching the conversation. I don't wear a watch. So I will oftentimes go, do you know what time it is? Something as simple and innocuous as that. And if they can answer me, great. We've established communication. They know I sign. And from then on, if it looks like they're talking to someone, in that case, I did that. And they went, oh, it's like 1 o'clock or whatever. And they're like, you signed? I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm an interpreter, teach ASL. Like, oh, cool, 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 cool. Oh, do you mind helping us? Boom. If they had said, oh, cool, I would probably have said, so just know your place. It's always there. It may be an absolute nightmare for them, but it's their choice, right? But it's good to be around as an advocate. So that's a big thing. So the first thing is that. The second thing is a little bit more applicable for a deaf event. And I'm sure you've heard this. It's rude to speak in a language or a mode that the people around you can't understand. I mean, it's one thing if your roommate, my best friend is Pakistani, so when he talks to his parents, we'll be driving in the car having a conversation, phone rings, all of a sudden he's speaking Urdu, I think is, I'm probably wrong. He should hit me. But he'll be speaking to his family. He won't have a long conversation because it's rude to leave me out, right? So the same thing, even if you're with someone who's hearing and doesn't sign, it's still polite to, at least, as if you have to speak, signing with what you're doing so people know what you're talking about. We're all paranoid. Someone is saying something. The first thing when you're with people who speak another language, are you talking about me? Especially if they are looking at you and say something and laugh. Could be as innocuous as, we probably shouldn't be doing this because he doesn't understand. And I'm like, my fly's open. I don't know what's wrong. They think I'm an idiot, right? So if it's a deaf event, the idea is that it's supposed to be in sign language. So even if you're on Zoom with deaf people, sign things. You turn and you talk to someone in the room, sign it. Even if it's mom, my mom will be like, what are you signing? Like, I'm just signing what I'm saying. Well, why are you signing? I don't need it. I have someone here who is deaf and I need to sign with them. It's respectful. We don't understand why. If you need to speak, close off your video. Just be polite. The same way where you wouldn't want deaf people to be signing in front of you and you didn't understand and then looking at you and sort of laughing, right? So, if you do need to take a phone call, mute the video, leave the room, something. One of my best friends is an interpreter, parents deaf, We've both been signing for most of our lives. His wife is deaf. So when we go over to their house, we're always signing. But if the two of us end up in the kitchen alone, as we always do, usually we're cooking, we'll talk. But the moment a deaf person comes in the room, we start signing again. So just being respectful. If there's a deaf person in the room, so that's what to look for in these. So little things like that. There are two versions of each scene. There's two scenes. There's actually three scenes. The homework is a third one, and I included that pair of scenes as well. One's a positive, one's a negative. But a slightly different question, how was communication initiated? Who was in control of that conversation? And was there a balance between spoken English and sign? And was anybody left out of that conversation? So it's a slightly different point of view than the previous questions. So I want you to be able to balance both of those so that when you go to a deaf event, you can look around. If you see students who aren't signing, ASL1 students, for example, Akron, it's sometimes good to step in and facilitate that. Even if you're, ASL3 and you feel like I can't interpret, if you're like trying to get them, oh, he said this, like sort of delay interpreting for them. If it makes the students feel a little bit awkward and they start signing, all the better. I wish I could give you bonus points for that. So cafe, and then some of the discussion of what happened in the two different scenarios or the two different versions. The art gallery, two different versions. And if we talked about art, there's Chuck Baird. This stuff, really cool. Another thing to think about is if you ever go to a deaf event and are bringing a hearing person along, oftentimes it's a significant other or someone that you're stuck having to drag around. If you've got a child and you have to bring them, it's really important that they understand the purpose of the event, that it's not about talking. It's not about speaking English. It's about signing. So make sure they understand that. If they can't handle that, it might be better to drop them off at a store so they can look around for a couple hours, or the library, or a coffee shop, or something. Because you don't want to be seen in a negative light because you got a jerk for a friend. That happens enough in real life. We don't need that anymore. So that's this next thing, is when you go to a deaf event, think about these things. Always let the deaf people be in control of conversation. It feels weird. It feels very prejudiced. If you feel like some people feel like, well, my language is not being respected. All languages matter. That's not the point of this event. A deaf event is a sign language event. That's the point. So it's important. Because one of the big things that we get criticized for is sending students out to be parasites and force deaf people to have banal conversations. And we don't want that. Be interested, be interesting. Don't give monosyllabic answers in sign language. Ask questions, expand, give more information. And if you bring someone along, make sure it's someone who's willing to try or who's going to stick close to you and let you interpret for them. Because if they're going to just go, I don't know, sign, and if they're just going to speak louder, you don't want them as a friend. Let's be honest. And two, you don't want them at that event. So, blah, blah, blah. So again, this is a return to the first few things. This is the second scenario. This video, is it loading? Yes, it's processing. I will try to upload a better copy of it. So this is in the classroom. So this is the third of the things. And there's one way, second way, and a recap of all of the stuff and all the videos. So 11-12, again, it's just interactive stuff and advice. So take a look at those videos.